They say angels come in disguise, but no one would imagine that a homeless orphan would become the messenger of a love worth billions. This is a story of how a simple glass of water changed 3 lives forever and nearly destroyed them all. The rain was merciless. That night Saracen became an orphan. She was only 7, watching through the hospital window as the doctors pulled the white sheet over her mother's face. Cancer had won. The last words her mother whispered still echoed in her mind 15 years later. "Never let the world make you hard, my little angel. Promise me you'll always choose kindness." That promise would be tested in ways she never imagined. Meet Sarah Chun, now 22, with tangled black hair that once shone like silk when her mother brushed it. Her clothes were donations from charity bins, but she wore them with a dignity that made people look twice. She'd been living on the streets of Manhattan for 6 months after aging out of the foster care system, thrown out of her last foster home the day she turned 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of belongings and a heart full of dreams that seemed increasingly impossible. The foster homes had been a parade of disappointments. The Johnsons, who locked the refrigerator at night. The Martins, who spent her foster care checks on their own children while she wore shoes with holes. The Brennans, where the father's wandering eyes made her sleep with a chair against her door. Each home had chipped away at her faith in humanity, but never quite broke it. She still believed somehow that kindness could change the world. On the other side of the city, in a gleaming penthouse office that touched the clouds, sat Alexander Whitmore, 32, heir to a real estate empire worth $4 billion. His secretary had just informed him that another woman claiming to be his soulmate had tried to breach security, the 3rd this month. He laughed bitterly, pouring himself a scotch at 10 a.m. His perfectly tailored Armani suits couldn't hide the emptiness in his steel gray eyes that had seen too many people's true colors when money entered the equation. Alexander's story was one of gilded cages. His parents died in a plane crash when he was 12, leaving him with a fortune and a grandmother who tried her best to fill the void. But money attracted vultures. His first love, Rebecca, had sold their intimate photos to tabloids. His business partner and current girlfriend, Victoria, he'd caught reviewing his will with her lawyer. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. "You need to find someone who would love you if you were penniless," his grandmother Margaret would say during their Sunday dinners. He'd roll his eyes. "Those people don't exist, Grandma. Not in our world." Margaret Whitmore, 80 years old with eyes that sparkled like she knew secrets the universe hadn't shared with anyone else, would just smile. "They do, my dear. Sometimes they're just hidden in places we forget to look." Our story begins on a sweltering July afternoon in Central Park, where the paths of forgotten and the fortunate were about to collide in the most unexpected way. Sarah was searching through trash cans for recyclables, each bottle worth 5 cents, 20 bottles equaling $1 menu meal. Her stomach had been growling for 2 days straight. She'd given her last bit of food to Jamie, a 14-year-old runaway she found crying behind a dumpster. The hunger was a familiar companion now, but it never got easier. That's when she saw her, an elderly woman in an elegant cream Chanel dress, stumbling near the Bethesda fountain. The woman clutched her chest, her Hermes purse falling to ground, pills scattering across the pavement, while dozens of people in designer suits walked past, too busy checking their phones to notice. Sarah's heart lurched. She recognized the signs. Her mother had looked the same way during her attacks. Sarah dropped her bag of cans, the clatter sending them rolling away. There went dinner and tomorrow's breakfast. But she didn't hesitate. She rushed to the woman's side, gently lowering her to ground, checking her pulse. The woman's eyes were glazed with panic. "It's okay. I've got you," Sarah whispered, the same words she used to tell the younger kids at the shelter. She spotted the nitroglycerin pills and helped the woman take one, then used her last $3, hidden in her sock for emergencies, to buy a bottle of water from a nearby vendor who was charging tourist prices. "Sip slowly," Sarah instructed, cradling the woman's head in her lap, not caring that the ground was filthy or that people were staring at the strange pair, the homeless girl and the society matron. Margaret Whitmore looked up into Sarah's eyes and saw something she'd been searching for her whole life. Genuine compassion with no expectation of reward. Here was this young girl, clearly starving herself, giving away what might have been her only meal money. Margaret's heart, which had been struggling for more than just a cardiac episode, suddenly felt fuller than it had in years. "What's your name, dear?" Margaret asked when she could breathe again. "Sarah, are you feeling better? Should I call someone?" "An ambulance." "No ambulance. I'm fine now, thanks to you." Margaret studied the girl's face, the hollow cheeks that spoke of hunger, the kindness that radiated despite everything. "When was the last time you ate, child?" Sarah's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly. She blushed. "That's not important. Are you sure you're okay? Your pills." "Come with me," Margaret insisted, struggling to stand. Sarah helped her, gathering the scattered pills. "Let me buy you lunch." "It's the least I can do." "Oh, no, I couldn't." "Nonsense. You saved my life." Although Margaret's eyes twinkled with mischief. "We'll go somewhere simple. I'm not really dressed at McDonald's, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. If you believe that love can bloom where no one expects, maybe it's time to join us on this journey." They ended up at a small diner where Margaret watched in amazement as Sarah ordered only soup, the cheapest thing on the menu, and then asked for extra crackers for later. As they talked, Margaret's plan began forming. This girl, this beautiful, broken, kind soul, was exactly what her grandson needed. And perhaps what Sarah needed too. Margaret learned Sarah's story in pieces, each revelation breaking her heart more. The foster homes that treated her like a paycheck. The teacher who tried to help her get into college, only for Sarah to age out of care with nowhere to live. The night spent in 24-hour laundromats, pretending to wait for clothes while catching a few hours of sleep in the plastic chairs. "What about shelters?" Margaret asked gently. Sarah's face darkened. "They're not safe, especially for women. I'd rather take my chances in park." Margaret made her decision. She began meeting Sarah regularly, always in disguise, leaving her jewelry at home, wearing simple clothes she borrowed from her housekeeper. She told Sarah she was a retired teacher named Maggie, living on Social Security. Sarah never questioned why Maggie's simple clothes were so well made or why her costume jewelry looked so real. For 2 months, Margaret studied Sarah like she was a precious gem being evaluated. She watched Sarah give half her sandwich to a homeless veteran, saw her spend an afternoon teaching a little boy in the park to read using a discarded newspaper, witnessed her step between a drunk man and his girlfriend, taking the blow meant for the crying woman. "Why do you do it?" Margaret asked one day. "Why help others when you have so little yourself?" Sarah smiled, a sad, beautiful thing. "Because I know what it feels like when no one helps. If I can spare even one person that feeling." She shrugged. "My mother used to say we're all angels in training. Some of us just have harder lessons." Margaret's heart was decided, but she needed to be sure. She crafted one final test. One day, Margaret accidentally left her purse on the bench. Inside was her real ID, her phone with Alexander's contact, and $3,000 in cash. When Sarah found it and saw the ID, Margaret Whitmore of Whitmore Industries, her hand shook. She recognized the name. Everyone in New York knew the Whitmores. The cash could solve every problem she had. She could get a room, clean clothes, food for weeks. Instead, Sarah looked at the emergency contact and dialed. "Mr. Whitmore, my name is Sarah Chun. I found your grandmother's purse in Central Park." Is she okay? She's been very kind to me, and I was worried when I realized she'd left it. Alexander's voice was sharp, suspicious. Where are you? Don't move. Don't touch anything else. I'm by the Bethesda fountain. And, sir, please tell her I put the pills she needs in the inner pocket so they wouldn't get lost. Alexander arrived in a black Bentley that made everyone in a 3-block radius stop and stare. He stepped out in a suit that cost more than most people's cars, his face a mask of cold beauty and colder suspicion. Sarah watched him approach and thought heaven must have lost an angel, a fallen one, perhaps, but an angel nonetheless. The photos in the business magazines didn't do him justice. You found my grandmother's purse, he said, not a question but an accusation. Sarah held it out. Everything's there. I know it might not look like it, but I didn't take anything. Alexander counted the cash openly, insulting in his thoroughness. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she said nothing. He pulled out his wallet, extracting $500 bills. Your reward. I don't want your money. He blinked, genuinely surprised. In his world, everyone wanted his money. Excuse me. I said I don't want your money. I'm just glad your grandmother is safe. She's a wonderful lady. You know my grandmother? His suspicion deepened. We talk sometimes. She feeds the pigeons here. Tells great stories about her late husband. Sarah smiled at the memory. Did you know he proposed to her 7 times before she said yes? She said she wanted to make sure he really meant it. Alexander felt something crack in his chest. His grandmother had told him that story 100 times, but hearing it from this stranger's lips, seeing the genuine affection in her eyes. Get in the car. What? You helped my grandmother. The least I can do is drive you wherever it is you live. Sarah looked at the Bentley, then at her own reflection in its pristine windows. That's really not necessary. Get in the car, miss. Chun. Sarah Chun. And I can walk. It's going to rain. As if on cue, thunder rumbled overhead. Please. That please undid her. When was the last time someone like him said please to someone like her? The ride was silent at first. Alexander kept glancing at her in the rear-view mirror, trying to reconcile this woman with his grandmother's purse with the image before him. Designer clothes could be faked, jewelry could be costume, but genuine kindness? That was harder to counterfeit. Where to? He finally asked. Sarah directed him to a youth shelter on the Lower East Side. I volunteer here, she said quickly, reading to the kids. At 8 p.m., they have nightmares. Stories help. Alexander found himself parking, ignoring his phone's incessant buzzing. Show me. Inside the shelter, Sarah transformed. Children ran to her, calling Miss Sarah, Miss Sarah. She hugged each one, knew their names, their favorite stories. Alexander watched in the doorway as she read The Little Prince, doing different voices, making even the toughest-looking teenagers lean in to listen. You have children of your own? He asked afterward. Sarah's laugh was bitter. No one's exactly lining up to marry the homeless girl. You're homeless. The words escaped before he could stop them. Sarah's walls slammed up. Thank you for the ride, Mr. Whitmore. But Alexander couldn't let it go. He thought about her the entire drive home, throughout his business dinner with Victoria, who spent the entire meal discussing yacht options for their supposed engagement party. He thought about Sarah's eyes when she read to those children, the way she protected his grandmother's pills, the way she refused his money like it was poisoned. You're distracted, Victoria purred, running a manicured nail along his jaw. What's wrong, darling? Nothing, he lied, but all he could see were dark eyes that expected nothing and gave everything. We have more stories like this coming. So don't forget to hit the like button and turn on notifications. Margaret was delighted when Alexander called asking about the woman who'd found her purse. "Oh, Sarah, lovely girl. Did you know she's been teaching the sheltered children to read using newspapers and discarded magazines? Such creativity. Grandmother, did you know she's homeless? Is she?" Margaret's voice was too innocent. "How terrible. Perhaps we should help her." "We don't run a charity." "No, dear, we run a business. And good business is about recognizing valuable assets. That girl has more integrity in her little finger than most of our board members have in their entire bodies." Alexander couldn't argue with that. He'd just discovered Victoria had been insider trading using information from his private meetings, the last in a long line of betrayals. Margaret orchestrated her next move carefully. She called Sarah, panicking about needing help with some errands, claiming her usual assistant was sick. Sarah, unable to refuse the woman she'd grown to love like the grandmother she'd never had, agreed. "I'll pay you, of course," Margaret said when Sarah arrived at the address. The Whitmore mansion. Sarah stared at the estate, understanding flooding through her. "You're Mrs. Whitmore, not Maggie, the retired teacher." "I never said I was a teacher," Margaret said gently. "You assumed. I just didn't correct you." "Why?" Sarah's voice broke. Was this some kind of game? Poor little homeless girl. Let's see how she dances. "No." Margaret reached for her, but Sarah stepped back. "I needed to know who you really were. People, they pretend around money. But you, my dear, you were just yourself. Beautiful, kind, genuine you." "I can't do this." Sarah turned to leave, but Margaret's next word stopped her. "My grandson is dying inside. Sarah, not literally, but his soul, it's withering. Every betrayal, every person who sees him as a wallet with legs, kills him a little more. He's forgotten how to trust, how to love. He's 32 years old and already dead inside. I've watched him turn into someone I don't recognize. Cold, calculating, alone." Sarah turned back, seeing tears in the old woman's eyes. "I've been looking for years for someone who could remind him that love exists. Real love, the kind that doesn't check bank balances or prenuptials. The kind that just is." Margaret wiped her eyes. "I'm 80 years old, Sarah. I won't be here forever. The thought of leaving him alone in his golden cage, it breaks my heart." Despite everything, Sarah found herself comforting the woman, because that's who she was. Someone who couldn't see pain without trying to ease it. She took the job with conditions. She would be Margaret's assistant, nothing more. She would have no contact with Alexander beyond what was necessary. And the moment she felt like she was being manipulated or used, she was gone. For a month, it worked. Sarah helped Margaret with genuine enthusiasm, organizing her charity work, reading to her when her eyes were tired, even cooking simple meals that reminded Margaret of her childhood. The house staff, initially suspicious, grew to adore her. She treated them like equals, learned their names, asked about their families. Alexander, however, was a constant, brooding presence. He'd arrive for his weekly dinners with Margaret and find Sarah there, helping serve because the cook's arthritis was acting up, or organizing Margaret's medications with a color-coded system that made the nurse's job easier. He watched her constantly, try and find the angle, the con, the moment she'd reveal her true nature. Instead, he found moments that confused him. Sarah sneaking food to the gardener's son, who was struggling in college. Sarah staying late to help the housekeeper whose daughter was sick. No overtime requested. Sarah turning down Margaret's offers of bonuses, clothes, a permanent room in the mansion. "Why won't you accept anything?" he confronted her one evening, finding her in the library reading to Margaret. "Because I'm not for sale," Sarah said simply. "My help, my friendship, my time, these I give freely. The moment I take more than a fair wage, it becomes something else. Everything becomes something else eventually, Alexander said bitterly. Only if you let it, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Your grandmother pays me fairly for my work. I need nothing more. Everyone needs something more. Do they? Or have you just been surrounded by people who taught you that? Sarah stood, helping Margaret to her feet. Come on, Mrs. W. Time for your medicine. Alexander watched them go, his grandmother looking back at him with knowing eyes. He poured himself a drink and stared at the fire, wondering when he becomes so cynical that simple kindness seemed like an elaborate con. Would you have done the same? I'd love to know what you think. The turning point came during a charity gala. Margaret insisted Sarah attend as her companion, overriding all protests. She even bought Sarah a dress. Simple, elegant, nothing like the flashy gowns the other women wore. Sarah felt like a fraud, but Margaret needed her support in the crowded ballroom. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. Sarah, out of her usual simple clothes, was devastating. But it wasn't the dress or the way her hair was pinned up, revealing the elegant line of her neck. It was how she stayed by his grandmother's side, deflecting unwanted attention, helping her navigate the crowd, whispering jokes that made Margaret laugh. Victoria noticed his attention. Who's the charity case? She asked, venom in her voice. Grandmother's assistant. How quaint. I suppose we all need our little projects. Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Though really, darling, your grandmother should be more careful. These people will steal you blind if you let them. Alexander felt something snap. These people, you know what I mean. Look at her. She's probably calculating the value of the silverware. He looked at Sarah, who was helping an elderly man who dropped his cane, missing the ambassador she'd been introduced to in favor of basic human kindness. I think you should leave, Victoria. Excuse me? We're done. Leave. Victoria's face contorted. You're throwing me away for that street trash? The words carried in the sudden hush of the ballroom. Sarah's face went white, then red. She straightened her shoulders and walked directly to Victoria. You're right, Sarah said quietly. I am street trash. I've slept in alleys and eaten from dumpsters. I've been invisible and worthless and forgotten. But you know what I've never been? Cool, shallow, empty. She looked Victoria up and down. I'm maybe trash, but at least I'm recyclable. You're just toxic waste. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Margaret smiled proudly. Alexander felt his heart stop and restart with a different rhythm. Victoria stormed out, but not before hissing. You'll regret this. All of you. Sarah excused herself to the ladies' room, where she locked herself in a stall and cried. Not from hurt. She'd been called worse, but from exhaustion. She was so tired of fighting, of proving she deserved to exist in spaces like this. She didn't hear the door open, didn't know anyone was there until a tissue appeared under the stall door. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome, Alexander's voice replied, and Sarah nearly fell off the toilet seat. This is the ladies' room. I know. I bribed the attendant. Come out, Sarah. No, please. That word again. Her undoing. She emerged, mascara streaking her cheeks. Alexander handed her more tissues, then shocked her by dampening one and gently wiping the smudges away. I'm sorry, he said, for Victoria, for everything. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I brought her here. I've surrounded myself with people like her for so long, I forgot what real looked like. Until you. Sarah's breath caught. Mr. Whitmore. Alexander. Please, just Alexander. Alexander. The name felt like honey on her tongue. I should go. Why? Because I'm falling in love with you, she said, the truth spilling out like water through a broken dam. And that's not why I'm here. Your grandmother is paying me to be her assistant, not to develop feelings for her grandson. It's inappropriate, and... He kissed her, right there in the ladies' room of the St. Regis Hotel, with shocked socialites pushing at the door and his entire world shifting on its axis. He kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning his entire life. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've been looking for you my whole life," he whispered. "I just didn't know it." But fairy tales aren't easy, especially when billions of dollars are involved. Victoria's revenge was swift and brutal. She leaked Sarah's history to every gossip site, every tabloid, every social media influencer who'd listen. From homeless to homewrecker, the gold digger who seduced the Whitmore heir. Photos of Sarah from security cameras at her worst moments, digging through trash, sleeping on park benches, her mugshot from when she'd been arrested for vagrancy. The stories were cruel, twisting every kind act into calculated manipulation. Her volunteer work at the shelter became grooming connections with vulnerable youth to appear sympathetic. Her refusal of reward became playing hard to get to drive up her value. Her relationship with Margaret became elder abuse for financial gain. Alexander tried to shield her, but Sarah saw every headline, read every comment. The shelter asked her not to come anymore. Her presence was disruptive. The children she read to were told she was a bad person who'd lied to them. Everything she'd built, every small victory, crumbled. The final straw came when photographers followed her to her mother's grave, the one place she felt safe. They photographed her crying, kneeling in the mud, begging her mother to tell her what to do. The headline read, "Fake tears at Mommy's grave. How low will she go?" That night, Margaret's 80th birthday, Sarah made her decision. The party was beautiful. Ice sculptures, orchestras, flowers flown in from around the world. Sarah wore the gown Margaret had chosen specially, smiled for the cameras, played her part perfectly. When Margaret stood to make her toast, revealing the foundation, the $50 million for a homeless youth in Sarah's name, the room exploded, some with admiration, others with barely concealed disgust. Sarah saw the calculations in their eyes, the nobody who'd somehow won the lottery. She stood, clinked her champagne glass for attention. The room fell silent. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore, for this incredible gesture, but I can't accept it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Not because I don't want to help homeless youth. God knows I do. But because accepting this would prove everyone right. That I'm here for the money. That every moment of kindness was calculated for this payoff. She looked directly at Alexander, memorizing his face. "I love your grandson. I love him in a way that has nothing to do with his bank account, and everything to do with the way he smiles when he thinks no one's looking. I love your family, Mrs. Whitmore. You gave me something I hadn't had in 15 years, the feeling of belonging somewhere." Tears ran down her face now, real and unstoppable. "But I won't let that love be turned into something ugly by people who can't understand that sometimes hearts just recognize each other across impossible divides. So thank you, but no. I'll find another way to help those kids. A way that doesn't require me to lose myself in the process." She walked out of the ballroom with her head high, through the kitchen where the staff gave her sad smiles, out into the night where photographers screamed questions and flashes blinded her. She walked for miles in her gown and heels, until her feet bled and the dress was ruined. By dawn, she'd made it back to her spot in the park. She sat on the bench where she'd met Margaret, holding the old woman's handkerchief, the only thing she'd kept. The sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of hope she no longer felt. That's where Alexander found her 3 hours later, after searching every shelter, every bridge, every corner where the forgotten might hide. "You left," he said, sitting beside her in his rumpled tuxedo. I had to. Why? Because staying would have proved them right. Every horrible thing they said would become true if I stayed. So, you're going to let them win? You're going to let Victoria and people like her dictate our lives? Sarah looked at him, really looked. His eyes were red-rimmed, his perfect hair disheveled. He looked human, vulnerable, beautiful. Your grandmother is in the hospital, he said quietly. She collapsed after you left. She keeps asking for you. Sarah was on her feet instantly. What? Is she? She's stable, but she's refusing treatment until she sees you. He stood too, caught her hands. She said to tell you that love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And she chooses you. We choose you. I choose you, Sarah. Not because you're perfect or because you saved her that day in the park, but because you see me. Not the heir or the billionaire or the broken man who's forgotten how to trust. Just me, Alexander. I love you, he said, the words rusty from disuse. I've loved you since you refused my money. Since you read to those kids like they were precious. Since you told Victoria exactly what she was while standing there in a borrowed dress with more class in your little finger than she'll ever have. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you make me want to be better than I am. The world will never accept it, Sarah whispered. They'll always see me as a gold digger who got lucky. Then we'll build our own world, he said fiercely. One where the only opinions that matter are ours. He pulled out his phone, showing her something that made her gasp. While she'd been running, he'd been working. The Whitmore Foundation's website was live, with her story, the real story, front and center. But more than that, there were testimonials from the shelter workers who'd known her, from the kids she'd taught to read, from the veterans she'd shared her food with, from store owners who'd let her use their bathrooms, from the librarian who'd let her stay past closing to finish her books. Hundreds of stories about the real Sarah Chun, the girl who gave when she had nothing, who loved when the world had given her every reason to hate, who survived not by hardening her heart, but by keeping it open despite the pain. How? She breathed. Grandmother's idea. She said if they wanted to dig into your past, we'd show them what they missed. Every life you touched, every kindness you showed. Let them try to twist that into something ugly. Through her tears, Sarah saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't about money or foundations or charity. This was about two broken people who'd found in each other the missing pieces of themselves. Take me to her, Sarah said. Take me to Margaret. At the hospital, Margaret was holding court from her bed, directing lawyers and assistants with the energy of someone half her age. When she saw Sarah, her face lit up. There's my girl, she said, shooing everyone out. Come here. Sarah flew to her side, clutching the weathered hand. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I just... Hush, Margaret said. You did exactly what I knew you would. You chose integrity over comfort, love over luxury. That's why you're perfect for him, for us. But the foundation will be run by you as director, earning every penny through your work. No gifts, no handouts. A job, Sarah, one you're qualified for because you've lived it, because you understand what those kids need in a way no sociology degree could teach. Sarah's sob was half-laugh. You manipulative old woman. I learned from the best, Margaret winked. My Henry always said the best deals are the ones where everyone wins. You get to help thousands of kids like you. Alexander gets someone who loves him for himself. And I get the daughter I always wanted. Margaret. Mom, the old woman corrected. If you're marrying my grandson, you'll call me Mom. From the doorway, Alexander cleared his throat. She hasn't said yes yet. Margaret scoffed. Of course she'll say yes. Won't you, dear? Sarah looked between them. This strange, wonderful, complicated family that had chosen her, that saw her not as a project or a charity case, but as someone worthy of love exactly as she was. I need conditions, she said. Name them, Alexander said instantly. I work for my salary. No special treatment. I build the foundation from the ground up my way. Done. We live modestly until I can contribute equally. No penthouse, no staff, a normal apartment where I can cook badly and you can pretend to enjoy it. Alexander's smile was radiant. I'm an excellent cook, actually. And Sarah took a breath. When we have kids, they volunteer. They see how the other half lives. They understand that money is a tool, not identity. When we have kids, Alexander repeated, his voice soft with wonder. Sarah blushed. If we have kids. Oh, you'll have kids, Margaret announced. I've seen it. 3 of them. 2 boys and a girl. The girl will have your heart, Sarah, and Alexander's stubbornness. The boys will have their father's head for business and their mother's soul for service. They'll change the world. You can't possibly know that, Sarah protested. Margaret's eyes twinkled. Can I? I knew you'd save me that day in the park. I knew you'd save him from becoming someone terrible. I know love when I see it. Real love, the kind that builds foundations in all senses of the word. And she was right, of course. The wedding was small, intimate, held in Central Park by the fountain where it all began. Sarah wore her mother's dress, altered and cleaned by Margaret's seamstress, who cried the entire time she worked on it. Alexander wore jeans and a simple shirt at Sarah's insistence. She wanted to marry the man, not the billionaire. The press went wild. Some called it the love story of the century. Others called it the con of the millennium. Sarah and Alexander ignored them all, too busy building their life to care about outside opinions. The foundation grew beyond anyone's wildest dreams, not because of the Whitmore name or money, but because Sarah understood the population she served. She hired former homeless youth as counselors. She created programs that addressed not just housing, but the trauma that often led to the streets. She fought for every kid like she was fighting for her younger self. Alexander changed too. He found joy in simple things. Cooking dinner in their modest apartment, volunteering at the Foundation's tutoring program, sitting in board meetings where his wife challenged every assumption about poverty and worth. His company pivoted, creating affordable housing initiatives that balanced profit with purpose. Victoria went to prison for embezzlement and fraud, her schemes finally catching up with her. She sent a letter from prison, apologizing, saying she'd never understood what love looked like until she saw them fight for each other. Sarah wrote back, offering forgiveness and resources for when Victoria was released, because that's who Sarah was, someone who believed in second chances. Today, 5 years later, the Whitmore Foundation has helped over 10,000 young people transition from the streets to stable lives. Sarah's stories required reading and social work programs. Alexander's business model is taught at Harvard as an example of conscious capitalism. They have 3 children, just as Margaret predicted. Luna, age 4, who organizes food drives in her preschool. Marcus, age 2, who shares his toys with everyone at the shelter's daycare. And baby James, 6 months, named for the runaways Sarah once fed, who's now graduating from college thanks to the foundation. Margaret lived to see all 3 grandchildren, passing peacefully at 95 while holding Sarah's hand and telling Alexander she was proud of the man he'd become. Her last words were, "Love wins. Always bet on love." The funeral was a testament to the lives they'd touched. Homeless youth stood beside billionaires. Shelter workers grieved alongside society matrons. And in the front row, Sarah held Alexander's hand as he cried for the grandmother who'd saved them both by believing love could bloom in impossible places. They say angels come in disguise. Sometimes they're homeless orphans with hearts of gold, teaching us that worth isn't measured in dollars. Sometimes they're grandmothers with a plan, showing us that wisdom means knowing when to break the rules. And sometimes they're billionaires who learn that the greatest wealth is finding someone who loved them before they knew their name. Sometimes they're a security guard who lets Sarah sleep in the bank lobby on freezing nights. The librarian who pretended not to notice she never left. The cook who always made extra mistakes that needed to be thrown outright when Sarah was passing by. Angels, all of them, proving that kindness is a currency that multiplies when spent. In a world that often feels divided by circumstance, their story reminds us that love speaks a language that transcends every barrier we build. That sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is not money or opportunity, but the simple gift of being seen, being valued, being chosen exactly as you are. If this story touched your heart, remember, you might be someone's angel today. That spare dollar, that moment of kindness, that choice to see the human behind the circumstances, it could be the beginning of someone else's love story, someone else's foundation, someone else's reason to believe that despite all evidence to the contrary, good things happen to good people, and love always finds a way. Sarah still works at the foundation, now expanded to 15 cities. She still takes the subway, still shops at discount stores, still stops to help anyone who needs it. The only difference is now she has the resources to help more effectively. She keeps a photo on her desk, not the mansion or the galas or the accolades, but that park bench where an angel in Chanel taught her that sometimes the universe has bigger plans than we can imagine. Alexander still runs Whitmore Industries, but with a different philosophy. Every business decision is filtered through a simple question. Would Sarah be proud of this? The answer guides him toward choices that honor both profit and people. He's been called soft by Wall Street, but his company's value has tripled since he started leading with his heart instead of just his head. Their children grow up understanding that privilege is a responsibility, not a right. Luna knows that her pretty dresses come from the same stores where mommy helps other families shop with dignity. Marcus understands that sharing isn't just about toys. It's about time, attention, and love. Baby James falls asleep to the same story Sarah once read to shelter children, surrounded by love that was earned, not inherited. The apartment they insisted on keeping becomes a symbol. Journalists expecting to find a makeshift arrangement, discover a home filled with laughter, handmade artwork from foundation kids, and the smell of Alexander's cooking. Sarah finally learned to make her mother's soup, the one thing she remembered from before everything fell apart. Now she makes it every Sunday, feeding whoever shows up, former homeless youth, current billionaires, and everyone in between. The foundation's success spawned imitators, but none could replicate what made it special. The understanding that homelessness isn't just about lacking shelter. It's about losing hope. Sarah's programs rebuild both, creating not just housing but homes, not just jobs but careers, not just survival but lives worth living. Every graduation ceremony at the foundation ends the same way. Sarah tells her story, all of it, the hunger, the fear, the night she wanted to give up, but also the kindness of strangers, the power of choice, the moment an elderly woman chose to see her as valuable. She always ends with the same words. You are not your circumstances. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do next. And if a girl who ate from dumpsters can stand here today, then anything is possible for you. Alexander usually watches from the back, tears streaming down his face. He's heard the speech 100 times, but it never fails to remind him of the day he almost let fear rob him of the greatest love of his life. Afterward, he'll find her, pull her into his arms, and whisper the same thing he said every day since their wedding. Thank you for choosing me. The ripple effects continue. Kids from the foundation grow up to become social workers, teachers, doctors, and yes, business leaders. They carry Sarah's philosophy with them. That success means nothing if you can't extend a hand to pull someone else up. Some of them become millionaires. All of them remain human. On the 10th anniversary of the foundation, they receive an unexpected donation, $50 million from an anonymous benefactor. The note simply reads, "From someone who learned that angels walk among us, usually in disguise. Thank you for showing me what I almost missed." Sarah knows immediately who sent it. She remembers every face from those dark days, including the security guard who pretended not to see her, but who'd left sandwiches on the bench where she slept. He'd won the lottery 5 years ago, and this was his way of paying forward a kindness that had cost him nothing but meant everything. The gala that night is different from that first one where Sarah felt like an imposter. Now she moves through the room with quiet confidence, wearing a simple dress she bought herself, greeting former homeless youth who become donors, shelter workers who become program directors, and billionaires who've learned that wealth without purpose is poverty of the soul. Victoria is there, fresh from her early release, working as an assistant at the foundation, her own journey from judgment to understanding complete. She and Sarah share a moment of profound connection. Two women who've learned that rock bottom can be the foundation for building something beautiful. As the evening winds down, Alexander takes the stage. The room falls silent, recognizing the power of a man who rarely speaks publicly about personal matters. 10 years ago, he begins, his voice steady but emotional. "I was the richest poor man in New York. I had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. I believed love was a luxury I couldn't afford. Trust a weakness I couldn't risk. Then a homeless woman refused my money and offered me something priceless instead, the chance to be seen as more than my bank account." He finds Sarah in the crowd, their eyes locking across the room. "My wife taught me that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. That strength isn't in building walls, but in having the courage to tear them down. That love, real love, doesn't calculate or manipulate or demand. It simply chooses, again and again, especially when choosing is hard." The room blurs through Sarah's tears as Alexander continues. "My grandmother used to say that angels walk among us in disguise. She was right. They disguise themselves as homeless girls with hearts too big for their circumstances, as elderly women with matchmaking schemes, as security guards and librarians and soup kitchen volunteers, as anyone who chooses kindness when cruelty would be easier, hope when despair would be logical, love when fear would be safer." He raises his glass. "To the angels among us, may we recognize them. May we cherish them, and may we have the courage to be them for someone else." The toast ripples through the room, but Sarah is already moving, pushing to the crowd to reach her husband. They meet in the middle of the dance floor, holding each other as if they're still that broken girl and that lonely billionaire who found in each other the missing pieces of themselves. "I love you," she whispers, the words as true now as they were in that hospital room years ago. "I love you too," he replies, adding what he always adds. "Thank you for saving me." "We saved each other," Sarah corrects, as she always does. And they had. Two souls who should never have met, brought together by an old woman's faith that love could bloom anywhere, even in the space between park benches and penthouses, between having nothing and having everything, between who the world says you are and who you choose to become. Their story spreads far beyond New York, inspiring similar programs worldwide. The Whitmore model becomes shorthand for philanthropic efforts that treat recipients as humans deserving dignity, not projects requiring pity. Universities study their approach. Governments implement their strategies. But at its heart, it remains what always was, a love story. Not the fairy tale kind where princes rescue princesses, but the real kind where broken people help each other heal, where kindness is a radical act, where choosing to see the best in someone allows them to become it, where an old woman's meddling and a young woman's courage combine to prove that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the truest ones. Years from now, when historians write about the transformation of social services in America, they'll point to policies and programs, statistics, and studies. But those who really understand will know it started with a glass of water on a hot day, offered by someone who had nothing to someone who had everything. And in that moment of simple human kindness, everything changed. Margaret was right about many things, but especially this: love wins. It wins when we choose connection over suspicion, when we see angels instead of threats, when we realize that the distance between having and not having is smaller than the distance between caring and not caring, when we understand that we're all just one act of kindness away from a completely different life. The Foundation's motto, inscribed in stone at every facility, captures it perfectly. From small acts of love, great changes grow. Sarah insisted on those words, remembering that $3 bottle of water that changed 3 lives forever. And in the end, that's what their story teaches us. That love isn't measured in grand gestures or bank accounts, but in the daily choice to see each other as worthy. That angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they have shopping carts and worn shoes and hearts that refuse to harden. That billionaires aren't always villains and homeless people aren't always victims. That sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find someone who sees past our circumstances to our souls. So the next time you pass someone on the street, remember Sarah and Alexander. Remember Margaret and her matchmaking. Remember that every stranger is a potential angel, every moment a possible miracle, every act of kindness a seed that might grow into something that changes the world. Because love stories like theirs aren't just fairy tales. They're promises. Promises that no matter how dark the night, dawn comes. That no matter how alone we feel, someone sees us. That no matter how impossible it seems, love finds a way. And if a homeless girl from Central Park can end up changing the lives of thousands, if a bitter billionaire can learn to trust again, if an elderly woman's scheme can build a legacy of love that spans generations, then maybe, just maybe, your own impossible dream is just one kind act away from coming true. The angels are out there, walking among us in disguise. The question is, will you recognize them? Better yet, will you become one? Because in a world that often feels divided by circumstances, we need more people who build bridges with their hearts. More people who choose love when fear would be easier. More people who understand that we're all just humans trying to find our way home. And sometimes home is found in the most unexpected places, like a park bench, a kind word, or the eyes of someone who sees you for who you really are and chooses to love you anyway. That's the real miracle. Not that a homeless girl married a billionaire, but that 2 broken people chose to heal together. Not that money solved problems, but that love transformed them. Not that angels exist, but that we can all choose to be one. If this story touched your heart, remember, your own love story might be just beginning. It might not involve billions or foundations or elderly matchmakers, but it will involve choice. The choice to stay open, to remain kind, to believe that somewhere out there, someone is looking for exactly what you have to offer. Not your perfection, but your truth. Not your success, but your heart. Not your circumstances, but your soul. And when you find them, or they find you, you'll understand what Sarah and Alexander learned that day by a fountain in Central Park. That love doesn't care about the distance between park benches and penthouses. It only cares about the distance between 2 hearts brave enough to bridge it. The story ends where it began, with angels in disguise, changing the world one act of kindness at a time. But really it never ends, because every day, somewhere, someone is choosing love over fear, hope over despair, connection over isolation. Every day, angels walk among us. The only question is, Will you be one of them?